Good afternoon. Let us dedicate these moments to God, to the realization of the one presence and the one power, and to the power of silence. When the headlines enter your house, they do not bring mere information. They arrive with pictures, suggestions, and a subtle invitation to fear. We have made a habit of reaching for the screen to feel in control, and we have discovered that the screen does not give control. It gives agitation. We say, "If I know, I will be safe." And then, after knowing, we are more afraid than before. It is not the report that has injured us. It is the acceptance of fear as power. Always remember this. There is no such thing anywhere at any time as an evil force or evil power. A headline has no power. A statistic has no power. A photograph has no power. Power is not in the image. Power is in the belief we attach to the image. The news is not the real danger. The acceptance of fear as power is. The moment we bow to fear, we have knelt to a second power, and we are hypnotized by appearances. The penalty for the belief in two powers is anxiety. Now then, we take a compassionate, contrarian stand. We will care, but we will not consent to fear. We will not join the world's panic in the name of love, because fear never redeems fear. We cannot heal the world by sharing its nightmares. We will not take sides. We will take refuge. God is the only power. God is the only presence. I and the Father are one. This is the temple of the living God. Right here, where I am, the Spirit of God is upon me. Do you see the difference between caring and being mesmerized? Compassion is spiritual. It proceeds from the recognition of one presence. Panic is contagion. It spreads because it pretends to be power. Compassion looks through the shadow and blesses. Panic stares at the shadow and worships it. Compassion releases. Panic tightens. Compassion says, "I will never leave you nor forsake you," and then grows quiet to let that promise be true. Panic argues, shouts, and never listens. Therefore, before we look out there, we shall go in here. Not by might, not by power, but by the grace of God. We will enter silence, stillness, quietness, confidence. We will make our simple statements of truth. God is the only power. I live and move and have my being in God. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. And then we will be very still. For voicing the truth is a necessary step, but it is not the healing agency. The power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows the truth. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and the seal upon that truth is our quiet consent. Let this be our orientation. When the headlines knock, we do not fling the door open to fear. We open first to God. We establish peace within. Then and only then do we meet the images, clad in the armor of spirit, robed in the awareness that the One governs. And so it is. Let us go to the root. Anxiety is not born of statistics. It is born of theology, often unconscious, but theology nonetheless. Doom-scrolling is not curiosity. It is worship at the altar of a second power. Somewhere within, a voice whispers, "There is God, yes, but there is also evil, chaos, violence, collapse, and these may at any hour overrule God. That is the secret creed behind the trembling hand that refreshes the feed. And the penalty for the belief in two powers is anxiety. Always remember this. Never deviate from the first chapter of Genesis. All that God made is good, and beside God, there is no other cause. There is no such thing anywhere at any time as an evil force or evil power. What you see with the eyes is not a cause. It is an effect, an image passing on the screen of human belief. If you attribute power to the image will govern you. If you rest in the source, the image dissolves into nothingness. God is the only power. God is the only presence. I and the Father are one. Do you see what the belief in two powers does? If you think there is a power called fear, disease, war, or collapse, you must monitor it, anticipate it, brace against it. You will rise in the night to consult the screen as if it were an oracle. You will call this vigilance, wisdom, and it will drain your peace. The mind says, if I keep watch, I will be safe. But it is not safety. It is servitude to a belief. The screen does not demand worship. Belief does. And belief, once enthroned, becomes a tyrant. Now hear the reframe. The world's images are effects in human thought, not causes in God. They are shadows, and the shadow does not create the sun, nor limit its light. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. The shadow has no substance. The presence is the substance. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Not because you out-argue it, not because you out-watch it, but because in God there is no second law to oppose His allness. Lo, I am with you always, unto the end of the world. The infinite is not threatened by the finite's imaginations. This becomes our first working truth, our discipline for today. I will not consent to two powers today. Make this your inner covenant. Whisper it as the hand reaches for the device. I will not consent to two powers today. Let it guard the doorway of your attention. Say it, and then be very still, if only for a breath. The power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows the truth. As you withhold consent from a second power, the compulsion loosens, the mind unbends, the heart remembers. God is the only power. The One governs. And in that recognition, the storm without loses its authority within. Let us be very clear what I mean by no sides. It is not apathy. It is not denial. It is not moral confusion. It is spiritual integrity. The refusal to personalize, demonize, or worship appearances. It is the recognition that God is the only power, the only presence, and that all the pictures presented to sense are shadows on a screen. When you take sides with a shadow, you grant it causation. When you rest in the One, the shadow loses borrowed authority. No sides is not indifference. It is the deepest kind of caring, because it refuses to feed fear with the incense of righteousness. Fear always chooses a side, because fear needs an enemy to survive. It must say, these are the guilty, these are the pure, and then it demands that you hate in order to help. But Spirit beholds one presence. Spirit knows, I and the Father are one, and therefore I can neither fear you nor worship you, for the same life is the life of us all. The no sides principle does not blind its eyes to suffering. It opens its eyes to the unseen truth behind persons and events. It refuses to call any person a power for evil. It sees through the mask to the one child of God, often buried under layers of belief. This is the temple of the living God. Even when the evidence argues, Spirit maintains its vision. Do not misunderstand. To behold the Christ of another does not condone a deed. It disempowers the belief that a deed is a second law with authority over God. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Not because we shout louder, but because we will not enthrone fear as righteous outrage. We can say with a clean heart, I do not have to hate to help. I do not have to panic to care. Love can feed, shelter, protect, advocate, and correct. But it does not need an enemy to be strong. The moment you need an enemy, you have left God for a substitute savior called fear. Make this your inner language as you move among reports and arguments. Right where this personality seems to stand, God stands. Right where this accusation rises, the presence is. I behold the Father's life as the only life. I behold the Son's innocence as the only truth of identity. Be very gentle and very firm. Refuse to let anyone recruit your fear in the name of goodness. Let your compassion be governed not by clamor, but by the still, small voice. And now you can see our next step. The point is not to win a debate with the news. The point is to establish consciousness before contact. To let the inner government of spirit set the terms of attention. Before you look at the world's sides, abide in the one. Be very still, even for a breath, until the heart remembers. God is the only power. Then go, and if you must choose a course, choose it from peace. In that way, your caring remains a blessing, your perception remains clear, and your hands become instruments of a love that needs no enemy to be effective. Be not afraid. The Spirit of God is upon you. Let us take the next honest step. Many of you have discovered that a few strong words of truth quiet the mind for a moment, and then, within minutes, the same compulsion returns to refresh the feed, to argue, to brace. You say the right words and still feel the tightness in the chest, the hurry in the breath. Why? Because voicing the truth is a necessary step, but it is not the healing agency. It is not the statement of truth that performs the work. It is the presence realized when the mind grows quiet after the statement. The power of God is made manifest in the silence that comes after the stating of truth. You can prove this in your own experience. When you hurl affirmations as if they were stones against the headlines, you discover that you are still in the arena of fear, only now with religious language. You are fighting shadows. You are tightening, straining, taking sides with one idea against another. This is not spiritual law. This is mental effort. It is argument. It is reaction. And reaction can never reveal God. Not by might, not by power, by the grace of God. The grace appears when the tongue rests and the ear opens. Truth has a holy function. It clears a space. It brushes aside the cobwebs of suggestion and leaves a doorway open. But it is the silence that walks through the doorway. It is the realized presence that heals, that stabilizes, that governs. When we speak truth rightly, we do so only to prepare ourselves for the greater work, no work of ours at all, the work of God fulfilling itself in our stillness. Be still and know. The knowing follows the stillness. The seal is placed on the treatment through our silence. Therefore, we shall adopt a gentle, exact way. what I will call our peace treatment before the news. First, recognition. God is the only power. God is the only presence. I and the Father are one. This is the temple of the living God. Second, release. I lay down my sword of opinions, my bracing, my need to monitor a second power. I release the world from my fear. Third, remembrance of promise. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Lo, I am with you always. Fourth, silence. Now be very still. Not thought, not effort, receptive quiet. Let God be God. In silence, in stillness, in quietness, in confidence. Fifth, return. Open the device or step into the street only from this poise. Move among images without consent to fear, without argument, without hurry. This is not numbness. It is consecrated strength. It is not detachment from love. It is love unhooked from panic. It is not the chill of denial. It is the warmth of realized presence. You will find that practiced in this way, reassurance becomes realization. The words no longer stand alone. They become the threshold to the living Christ within. And from that center, you can care, you can act, you can speak, but you cannot be hypnotized. God is the only power. The Spirit of God is upon me. Be very still, and let that be true. Look up here. Right here is God and man. Right where I am is the presence. Let the gaze soften. Let the breath be unhurried, and let the heart be willing. We are not preparing to armor ourselves against a second power. We are consenting to the only power to govern. Before you consult the world's reports, consult the inner government of spirit. Recognition. Say within yourself, slowly, with reverence, God is the only power. Be very still. God is the only presence. Be very still. God is the only law. Be very still. I and the Father are one. Be very still. This is the temple of the living God. Be very still. Let each sentence open a door, and after the door opens, do not run through. Wait, and allow the presence to come to you. The power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows the truth. Release. Without wrestling, without argument, let this be your gentle denial of hypnosis. Fear is not a power. Be still. Suggestion is not a power. Be still. Images are not a power. Be still. The screen is not a cause. Be still. I release the world from my fear, and I release my mind from its need to monitor a second law. Be still. In that quiet, notice the unclenching. Notice that nothing is required of you but consent. Promise consciousness. These are not slogans. They are the living voice addressing you now. Receive them as present fact. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be very still. Lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. Be very still. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Be very still. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Be very still. Let the mind stop checking and start listening. Stop proving. Begin resting. Not by might, not by power, but by the grace of God. Now, in this hush, acknowledge the government that truly governs. The government is upon His shoulder. The inner government is established here, not by decree of thought, but by realized presence. Be still again. Let God be God. Let the One be the only. If a thought rises to ask, "Is it working?" let that thought pass unentertained. The seal is placed on the treatment through our silence. When at last you turn to the report, do so from this poise. Move among images without granting them authority to live in you. If a tremor appears, pause at once. God is the only power. Be still. Return to promise. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be still. In this way you consult the news while abiding in the One, caring without panic, seeing without consenting to a second law. The Spirit of God is upon me. Be not afraid. The inner government holds. Now we come to the use of it in motion, meeting the images without being captured. Think of the daily scroll as the valley of the shadow. It can be dark to sense, but it is shadow, not substance, not law, not power. A shadow has no causation. It borrows shape from belief. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. We pass through. We do not pitch our tent there. We carry the inner government into the valley, and we emerge with it, unchanged. Make a small, exact practice. When the hand reaches for the device, pause one breath before touch. A single conscious breath. Whisper within, "Thou art with me." Be very still. Let that be more than words. Let it be presence. Then, only then, proceed. If the heart does not settle with that breath, take another. God is the only power. Be very still. A breath and a promise before a headline. This is your gatekeeping. The power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows the truth. As you read, distinguish awareness from absorption. Awareness beholds, absorption swallows. You may note the facts, but you do not drink fear. Let the reports pass before consciousness as clouds before the sun, while you remain the sun, not the cloud. You are the temple of the living God. The temple does not become the incense. It contains it without inhaling its smoke. Keep a soft gaze within as you take in the line of type. Feel the I and the Father are one beneath the movement of the eyes. Adopt a new inner question to displace the old hypnosis. Not, what is the worst outcome? That is the altar of a second power. Ask, what is God knowing here? Then be very still. Let the answer be the same every time if need be. God is knowing its own allness, its own government, its own life as the only life present. From that knowing, compassion can take form. Prayer, a gift, a call, a quiet refusal to spread panic. But the form will not be fueled by fear. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, and that includes the weapon of catastrophic imagination. Now then, build continuity. Between articles, take a Sabbath breath. Close the eyes for a moment, return to promise consciousness. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be very still. If a tremor rises in the body, set the device down at once and remember, the government is upon his shoulder. 2 or 3 sentences of truth and then the holy pause. You are not abandoning the world. You are refusing to abandon God. The seal is placed on the treatment through our silence. Carry this stance as you move through the day. The treatment is not a moment, it is your way of being. You can walk the streets, sit at the desk, meet the reports, and never once surrender your center. Be not afraid. The Spirit of God is upon me. In this discipline, the shadow is seen for what it is, appearance without authority, and the one presence remains the only government of your attention. You can walk through the shadow without granting it authority to live in you. And you will. Now we turn from self-stabilization to service. The gift is not to fix the world by fear, but to let the love that is God be felt through you. True help is spiritual. It blesses the world without bowing to the world's terror. We are not campaigning for a side. We are consenting to the one. God is the only power. God is the only presence. The government is upon his shoulder. In stillness, in quietness, in confidence, God's peace is the law of being. Make this your non-personal prayer of blessing. Right here, where the sense of nations arises, I recognize the one life. Right here, where peoples, tribes, and tongues appear, I behold the Christ, the light that lights every man, every woman, every child. Right here, where leaders stand, I do not worship personality. I acknowledge the presence as the only authority. I excuse no harm. I enthrone no evil. I refuse to consent to fear as power. I insist, silently, without argument, on God's government as the only government. Be very still. The power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows the truth. Bless the families of the earth. Not by projecting scenes, not by dramatizing sorrow, but by recognizing the same life, nearer than breath, appearing as all. I and the Father are one, and that which I know of oneness I allow to be the measure of my compassion, firm, clean, unafraid. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. Not because we shout it into the wind, but because in God there is no second law to make it prosper. Lo, I am with you, even unto the end of the world. Be still, and let it be so. Let us take 1 minute now for the world treatment. No images, no scenarios. Not this region or that, not this faction or that. Only the sense of one divine life, indivisible, appearing as all. One cause, one law, one presence, one power. Be very still. In silence, in stillness, in quietness, in confidence. Let God be God. Let the one be the only. If a thought of outcome arises, let it pass unentertained. Be still again. The seal is placed on the treatment through our silence. And now, from this hush, we allow compassion to take form without panic. It may be a prayer repeated through the day. It may be a gift, a meal, a letter, a vote, a call, a shelter opened, a hand extended. But its root is not fear. Its sap is not outrage. Its flower is not self-righteousness. Its root is God. Its sap is grace. Its flower is peace. When compassion is governed by the one, it is firm without hardness, clear without condemnation, active without frenzy. Be not afraid. The Spirit of God is upon me. Carry this world blessing as you move. Whisper within, God is the only power. Be very still. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be very still. If the world's clamor presses, do not answer it with clamor. Answer it with presence. In stillness, in quietness, in confidence, God's peace is the law of being. And so the world is blessed, not by our panic, but by the realized presence that moves through us as light without shadow. Now we come to embodiment. How this realized peace walks the streets and sits at the screen. Hear this and let it settle. You are not a defenseless mind facing a dangerous world. You are consciousness held in God. I and the Father are one. This is the temple of the living God. You do not go online as a vulnerable mortal hoping for safety. You go as the temple, already safe in the one presence. You do not step into traffic, markets, offices, and feeds as a leaf in the wind. You move as one who lives and moves and has being in God. Clothe yourself inwardly before you go. Robed in the robe of righteousness, meaning right recognition, God as the only power. Clad in the armor of spirit, meaning consciousness governed by God, not by suggestion. This robe is not for display, it is for rest. This armor is not for battle, it is for immunity. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper, not because you brace, but because there is no second law to make it prosper. Say within, as you reach for the handle of the door or the device, the government is upon his shoulder. Be very still. Wear the robe, wear the armor. Then proceed. Establish gentle, practical boundaries that honor your temple. Choose 2 or 3 ordained windows to consult the news, not all day, not at every tremor. A morning window, perhaps, and an evening window, each preceded and followed by the peace treatment. Recognition, promise, silence before. Recognition, gratitude, silence after. Refuse the superstition of endless checking. It is a ritual of a second power. We will not keep vigil before a false altar. If an urgent alert appears, pause first. God is the only power. Be very still. Then, if action is wise, act from God-governed poise, not from compulsion. Here is your measure of demonstration. It is not that you like the idea of peace. It is that you can read a headline and remain inwardly still. It is that your breath does not hurry, your center does not contract, your love does not harden. If a tremor rises, this is not failure. It is invitation. Close the device at once. Return to your robe. Return to your armor. Whisper the promise. I will never leave you nor forsake you. And then be very still. The power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows the truth. Persevere gently. If fear returns 10 times in an hour, return 11 times to the one. Each return is strength. Each silence is substance. You are training attention to abide in single power, single presence, single law. You do not conquer fear. You outlast it by refusing to feed it. Not by might, not by power, by the grace of God. And so you walk the streets as the temple, robed and armored, not against persons, not against events, but against hypnosis. You carry your sanctuary within. Be not afraid. The Spirit of God is upon me. In silence, in stillness, in quietness, in confidence, you move. The world may clamor, the presence remains. And in that presence, you are kept. Beloved, we have traveled a simple, holy arc. We began with the headlines enter the house, recognizing that the danger was never information, but hypnosis, the enthroning of a second power. We exposed the secret creed of anxiety and refused it. We exchanged sides for the one. We learned that statements of truth are for clearing the doorway, but the healing agency is the silence that enters after. We established a peace treatment before the news, walked the valley of the shadow without consenting to fear, blessed the world without borrowing its panic, and clothed ourselves in the robe and armor of spirit. Now we seal the work. Take with you a litany for the heart. Portable, simple, sufficient. God is the only power. Thou art with me. No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper. I and the Father are one. I will never leave you nor forsake you. The government is upon his shoulder. Let these be more than sentences. Let them become breath, gate, atmosphere. Speak them softly, and then be very still. The power of God is made manifest in the silence that follows the truth. Stop now. Lay down the need to fix, to predict, to guard with your mind.